Hello, everybody. Welcome. It is Wednesday, June 19th. It is hard to believe the month is almost over. It is the Mediavine Summer of Live. I am so excited to be here with you. I've missed you guys. It's been a while since I have been here, but I am very happy to be here. And I am so happy to be here with our publisher engineering manager, Jordan Cauley. Hello, Jordan. Thank you for joining me today.
Hi, how are you?
I am fantastic. How are you doing today?
I'm good. I've been around. We're glad to have you back, Jenny.
Well,
You've been out.
What? I'm sorry?
You said you've been out, and we're glad to have you back.
I have been out.
I missed you at the conference.
I missed you guys too. It has been a long couple of weeks. I've watched a lot of things that I didn't want to watch, but I watched them. I read a lot of things that I didn't want to read, but I did all the things, and I'm back. I'm so glad to be back. Okay, let's get to the exciting thing that we're talking about today, which is, drumroll please, Trellis. It is super exciting. It is our WordPress framework, and we're going to be talking all about it today. If you guys have questions for Jordan or questions about Trellis, anything you want to talk about, post them in the comments, and I will share them with him. But we've got a lot to talk about today because Trellis is a super exciting thing, and we're going to start out. First of all, let's just start from the top. What is Trellis? What the heck is it?
All right. Trellis. Trellis is a WordPress framework. What a framework is, everybody's heard of Genesis. That's the one that everybody knows about.
Right.
It's essentially a core set of theme files that provide a set of functionality and patterns for how your site might work in the context of WordPress. Genesis has been sort of dominant in the market for a long time. And they do some things that's really good. But what's most important is that it gives a foundation on which you can build what are called child themes in the WordPress world, which is, so there's a core set of functionality that Trellis will provide or that Genesis does provide right now. And a child theme lets you style that and add additional functionality or features specific to your site while relying on a core framework of code that provides a core set of features and value to your site. And so that's the difference between a framework and just a theme, is that a framework is meant to be built on top of and extended, whereas a theme might be a single package that is only designed for your site. And so that's sort of the difference between a theme framework versus themes. And Trellis is a theme framework. So while we call what we're building right now, or we call it Trellis Core, which is essentially the sort of core package that makes up the theme. And we built it so that you can use that right out of the bat. Like it's got a good looking site. It's a good looking site by itself. It's got a good set of functionality, but one of the things that we're hoping to expand upon is with child themes, it'll be more customizable and be able to be built against, so that you can capture the value that Trellis Core provides, but have a site that looks like something that, that represents you, the publisher.
We are all about customizable here at Mediavine. So we'll talk a little bit more about themes in a second, but tell us first, what makes Trellis unique, aka why should people run, not walk to use it when it comes out? What are the top features? Why is it so exciting? From
day one, Trellis was built essentially with Lighthouse and page speed insights in mind. It was very much built in a way to capture as much value from page speed as possible. As much as possible, it was designed so that by itself, it can score perfect scores in Lighthouse. Awesome. And that additionally, it can help improve speed even for features with other plugins loaded. Now, it's not going to be as fast if your plugins aren't we're sort of calling it Trellis optimized, but they're not written with page speed in mind, which is often the case. Obviously, we're building Create. We build our ads with page speed in mind, and we built Trellis with page speed in mind from the very bottom. Trellis actually won't be in the WordPress repository because we can't put it in the repository, because in order for us to meet the sort of Lighthouse goals that we had, it's got too much packed into it that the repo is sort of going to let us do. What Trellis does out of the gate is it actually provides what's called a progressive web app. So it will actually make your site sort of load as an app, and when it loads on an Android phone particularly, it'll actually prompt the user to install it on their site, on their phones. It's got lazy loading for images built in. That includes every image of the theme images, as well as content images are lazy loaded. So featured images, a lot of times on some themes, they won't actually lazy load the featured images because the lazy load utilities can't access those images to lazy load them. We took care of that by creating our own methods for making sure that all images could be lazy loaded. In general, we found that we also do things like we asynchronously load JavaScript more aggressively. We asynchronously load CSS more aggressively. So a lot of the line items that you might see in a Lighthouse or a PageSpeed Insights report, Trellis kind of eliminates as many of those as possible so that you're hitting the highest possible scores with just Trellis and maybe nothing else.
That's very exciting. Okay, we're getting some questions in, and I'm going to go ahead and jump back into those. But first, I'm going to say, so I don't forget, happy birthday to Jordan. It was this last weekend. Happy birthday, Jordan.
Thank you.
Yes. Yes. All right. So Paul Steven Swilbrook wants to know, is Trellis only for people that have been accepted by Mediavine?
No, it will be open to public use. We're going to have an extended beta period where it might only be available to Mediavine publishers. Once we sort of get through and solidify our API, we're going to be opening it up to a larger audience. It is going to be an open source framework, so the core files will be open source. We announced at the conference last week there will be Trellis Pro, so you'll be able to basically buy access to a family of child themes, much like you do with Genesis or in Studio Press or whoever else, so that you'll be able to, we'll have a library of child themes. And additionally, if you want to pay another developer to build against Trellis Core in a custom aspect, there will be ways for you to make that happen as well. So it is I forgot the word, but it is going to be available to non-Mediavine publishers or Mediavine publishers who are not with us yet. And I say yet as an operative term, but it will be available. It just won't be available as quickly. We're sort of focusing on making sure it's available to our publishers and we have an open communication with as we sort of roll it out, so that we can make adjustments and tweaks. And part of our beta period is also going to be involving potentially talking to those publishers who are beta testing to follow analytics and Google Search Console, because one of the things we want it to do really, really well consistently is that it's scoring well on SEO, it's scoring well on analytics, making sure that all of those numbers look great or are improved by Trellis all the way through. So every aspect of your site is improved by Trellis. That's our goal.
Excellent. Kim Sager says, happy late birthday, Jordan. We have more questions. So Karen Gibson says, are you working with any third-party devs who will be prepared to build out child themes right at the start, such as, for instance, Lauren from Once Couples?
So I actually talked to Lauren about this yesterday. One of the things we are going to be making sure that they have access as soon as possible to be able to build custom themes. However, it's important to us that there's a thing called an API, which is called it's an application programming interface, and essentially Trellis comes with a sort of set of template commands that are custom to Trellis to help us maximize speed. That involves how we do lazy load images. We also do this really cool thing where we actually make Trellis load its files faster by storing where those files are. We do a lot of those sort of low-level operations, and we have to solidify that API before we can safely hand that to custom developers. Lauren is someone who we will work with almost the soonest of any of the external developers. However, part of the early beta testing with actual users is primarily going to be on our child themes, so it's really easy for us to make adjustments across all of those while we're solidifying that API. So yes, that is the goal. It is going to be a little longer to get to that point than we had originally planned, just because we're being very cautious and careful about how we do this, because a lot of what we're doing in Trellis is very different, and so we don't have a lot of examples we can follow. We're blazing a new trail here, and so we want to make sure we're doing that carefully. And so we're going to be solidifying that API, and when we're at a place where we're pretty sure we're not going to be making major changes that complicate things for Lauren or other third-party developers, we're going to work with them. We've actually set up additional tools of communication so that when those developers want to join us and build against Trellis, they have access to the engineers that they need to make sure they can get their questions answered. It's very important to us that we do this well and we make it as valuable for publishers as possible.
Fantastic. Okay, we have a couple of questions on this right now. Karen Gibson, as well as Kim Sagers, they're wondering, they kind of have paused with your statement about Android visitors having to install something on their phones to view the site.
Oh, I'm sorry. If that's what it came off as, I misspoke. What I'm saying is that it's just a site. It'll work in the Chrome browser, no problems. What I'm saying is that when you land on the web page, they will have the option to install your website to their phone in the same way they would install an app. They'll just get a prompt that says, would you like to install this website to your homepage or to your home screen? It invites them to have an easier access to your website rather than requiring to install that. I'm sorry for that miscommunication.
That is very helpful. All right. Tara Jacobson wants to know, how is it alike or different from the Genesis core?
Well, there's a lot of sort of architectural choices that make it similar in what are called sort of the presentation hooks, so that you have places where you can plug in custom layouts and tools. The difference primarily is in the things that we chose to emphasize. Our emphasis, I'm not sure what Genesis' emphasis was, but it hasn't changed much. And the web has moved very quickly forward. And so our emphasis was, again, on meeting these sort of page speed goals that have become super important. That includes every time we make a change to our code base, we automatically run a test against Lighthouse and make sure that our Lighthouse scores are staying up in this 90+ range. I think the minimum range that we will accept for any PR is like a 96 or a 97. That's running several plugins and other utilities. The goal being we want to make sure that every time we make a change, it's super fast. So the fact that our emphasis has been on these speed changes is sort of the difference. We also made sure that we have built-in schema support, but we also know that most people run Yoast. So out of the gate, we made sure that if Yoast is enabled, our sort of schema will actually sort of take a back seat and turn itself off, because we know that's been a conflict Genesis had in the past. But that schema is also rendered as JSON LD plus JSON schema, which is the modern way, the way that Google wants that schema rendered forward. So very much the biggest difference is just that our themes came out more recently, and we're sort of thinking more about how Google wants data and websites to look today. It also includes like lazy loaded comments out of the gate, but we also validated that those comments are being indexed by Google. Like, we're just sort of checking all of those things as we go forward to maximize that page speed and that experience.
Awesome. Different points of emphasis and future-proof and mobile-first and all of the things that we preach at Mediavine are going into this framework as we build it.
Our goal in much of Trellis is that we know that there's a lot of times where you have to add a plugin with its own CSS and JavaScript to add core functionality that we believe should be core to every website. The goal with Trellis is to provide that functionality without the requirement of additional plugins, so that we can maximize that value in the way of building that in from day one to not lose out on additional JavaScript and CSS files that slow down your site.
Perfect. So we've got more questions for you. Julia Jordan wants to know, what requirements for your site need to be in place for Trellis? Do we need do we have to be on Create, our first WordPress plugin that we released earlier last year, using Gutenberg rather than Classic Editor? Is there anything else that we need to have in place in order to make the move to Trellis?
So there's no hard requirements. You are going to see the best speed. We've actually been looking at some comparisons, but you're going to see much better speed if you're using Create. Trellis is not going to be able to help the speed requirements if you're running a bunch of other things, but we can guarantee that Create has been sort of optimized to maximize that speed value. I actually just came up with another way to make Create even faster recently, and I'll be looking to try and figure out how to implement that soon. I can't, basically you're going to get the best speeds possible if you're using Create, because we're able to maximize and sort of read that value because we have control over that code base. You are not going to be required to make that change to be able to use Trellis. You might just see more speed. You're going to see lower speeds probably if you're not using that family of tools, because we're able to optimize in ways when we own them that we can't if it's not our tool. But that said, I anticipate people are going to mix and match all over the place. When it comes to Gutenberg versus non-Gutenberg, we will not be requiring Gutenberg, though our general advice at this point is start writing your posts in Gutenberg. Classic Editor only has such a shelf life, and more than likely what will happen is that over time there might be features that appear in Trellis or in Create that we can make available to Gutenberg users that trying to make them work for TinyMCE or Classic Editor users will be very hard to achieve. However, at this time, all of those features are being built to work with either editor.
I would like to say, just as a clarification here, that Jordan is trying to make me learn Gutenberg, and I'm not happy about it, but this is not something that he's doing just to you. He's also doing it to his coworkers. So if you're feeling like you're being slighted, I also feel as though I'm being slighted. So there's that.
I mean, it's actually worse for me we had to write a lot of new code to make Gutenberg work. So like, trust me, Gutenberg's been a very painful transition for us. But now that we're sort of building tools for it, and we're finding that there's a lot of potential there. But more than anything else, we know that the classic editor has a shelf life. At some point, they're going to stop supporting it directly, which means you'll have to rely on some third-party developer to give you this old editor experience that may or may not work and opens up a large host of potential issues.
I don't want a host of potential issues. I have enough issues of my own. That's not, all right, I'll learn Gutenberg, fine. Okay, Kimberly Vargo wants to know, is Trellis going to incorporate features that will allow users to lessen the amount of plugins they may currently need? It seems like to custom sites and optimize them. Several plugins are needed, which ends up slowing down sites. Okay, basically, I'm not sure if I think I'm struggling here. It's a little rusty, but will Trellis and the use of Trellis as our framework reduce the number of plugins that we need to have? I mean, you said the core functionality, but in terms of other plugins, yeah.
The goal is to try to provide a core set of functionality where you ultimately will need fewer plugins for a whole host of jobs. That's one of the reasons we actually encourage the use of Gutenberg, is that a lot of folks are really, they're enamored of page builders, but Gutenberg is a page builder that's built into core. And so that means that ultimately as Gutenberg grows and its family grows, you can have a page builder experience and custom pages experiences that's sort of done in a core fashion that's going to be more reliable and more in line with sort of the future. We are also, one of the things that we're sort of doing that's a little different is we're not a huge fan of one of the problems of having very complicated child themes or core themes with tons of settings and tons of layout options. The problem there gets into when you have those, you have to have a lot of additional JavaScript and CSS to support all of those permutations or different options. So one of the things we're sort of doing instead with our child theme plan is that we're actually just going to we're designing rapidly, just huge numbers of child themes. We want to have as many child themes as possible so that those changes are more about choosing the right child theme for you rather than selecting through hundreds of settings and sort of picking out layouts. That's sort of where our head is, because if you have a more concise child theme, you're going to have a faster site because you're not loading a lot of additional unneeded CSS and JavaScript. So that's sort of a balance we're trying to work out. We do not want people to need a ton of plugins to get what they need, but we are also building, I should have mentioned this, Genesis is also built to be a lot of different things for a lot of different people. It might be built so that it's a storefront. It might be built so that it can be a magazine layout. It might be built so that it can be corporate landing pages or small business websites. We think that makes a lot of sense for a lot of people, but when it comes to publishers and the value that they gain from their users visiting their sites and navigating their sites, most cases, this Trellis is built for publishers and sort of the publishing and content experience. If you're running a WooCommerce site, I'm not going to recommend that you install Trellis. We are not focusing on supporting WooCommerce. We're focusing on supporting sort of content, the content that most of our publishers are producing. And so I'm not going to sit here and tell you that Trellis is going to be for everyone, particularly out of the gate. But it is designed with the publishing and sort of reading experience of users in mind and the needs of most of our publishers, and meeting that sort of goal of very fast, very efficient sites that load very quickly for users, so that not only is your content ready for them, but the faster your site loads, potentially the more money you'll be able to make, because we are able to render ads and ad experiences faster so that you have higher viewability, and hopefully that will lift your RPM.
We love a good lift in the RPM. Okay, we have so many questions. I'm going to try to get through them all. So speaking of page builders, Salads for Lunch asked, is Trellis a page builder?
Absolutely not. We do not support page builders. know that people like them. That's why we're sort of encouraging folks to use Gutenberg, but we're not including any page builder experiences in our plugin. We're not requiring any additional plugins. You can run Trellis. You could hypothetically run Trellis without any other plugins on your site and have a very good experience. Even like we're including support if you're not running Yoast, though we're not going to tell you not to do that. There's no problem running Yoast with Trellis. But we provide article schema, we provide organization schema, we're providing all the schema that sort of is core to a general page. We'll be providing that as part of the Trellis Core. And again, it sort of turns itself off gracefully if you've enabled Yoast, because Yoast is a very powerful plugin for that kind of thing. But we are also providing those experiences. But if you're using Gutenberg, you're going to be able to load whatever page layouts you can in Gutenberg, and it supports those. And same with TinyMCE and Classic Editor. It's going to support those experiences, but we're not including, and we would prefer you didn't use a page builder, because in our experience, those are going to cost you a lot of page speed.
Can we go ahead actually and post our blog post on page builders just as an FYI in the comments? That would be amazing. Thank you, everyone. Okay. So Tara Jacobson, since Mediavine is making it, how does it make the ad experience for the reader?
It actually, the ad experience for the reader has always been important in Mediavine. That's why we have the optimize for page speed. It's why we sort of have lazy loaded ads to try and reduce costs. One of the great benefits of Trellis is not just really, it's also that we actually can create ad experiences that we can't provide elsewhere, which means potentially ad units that we can't safely serve on third-party non-Mediavine Trellis themes. We can actually provide those on Trellis themes so that you can actually potentially see more revenue because of the fact that we can adjust those ads. One of the things, for example, that you can have on or off, this is a setting that's provided in Trellis, is if you have Trellis and MCP, we, for the first time, are sort of offering built-in support for ads inside your post feeds.
Time out, what's MCP?
I'm sorry, Mediavine Control Panel. If you have Mediavine Control Panel enabled, you'll see an extra set of settings, just like you do in Create, actually. You'll see an extra tab that sort of has your ad settings, where you can adjust some ad settings and show, like, pick out the number, how often you might want to show sort of in-feed ad experiences so that you're actually putting ads on more pages than you're probably running today. And so that's an option that you can have. You'll also have access to some additional types of units that we're not able to provide universally, because Trellis has sort of been optimized to support those units as well. So we're hoping to be able to provide better ad experiences in Trellis than we can in a lot of third parties.
So bottom line, dollar bills, y'all, with Trellis, with your ads, to sum that up. Okay. Tara Jacobson. Oh, nope, we already did that one. So Ben, Heath, and Tara are wondering about different plugins that will be compatible with Trellis. Ben Heath is wondering, will auto-optimize and short pixels still be needed with these optimizations in Trellis? And Tara wants to know about WP Rocket.
So short pixel is definitely not something we are tackling today. So we would highly recommend people continue to use short pixel. We're not going to be tackling image generation with Trellis. WP Rocket, so depending on your host, you may or may not still need WP Rocket. We have one site that's been running Trellis in production, but their host provides some built-in caching utilities, and so she doesn't need Rocket. In our experience, you're not going to really see much benefit in Rocket. There's a lot of the things that Rocket's doing now that Trellis does by default. And so depending on who your host is, no, you probably won't need Rocket anymore. The thing you would need Rocket or potentially auto-optimize for is HTML caching and minification. We're sort of evaluating still whether or not we want to do HTML minification as part of the theme. The benefit that we saw in HTML minification in the page speed is sort of negligible, especially if the host is running gzip. And we wandered down the nerd path, but I know Ben Heath knows exactly what I'm talking about. So it's hard to say. Auto-optimize, probably maybe for HTML or like HTML minification, but probably not. Really, the page cache is what's going to be most important depending on who your host is. Because of the fact that our JavaScript files, by default, all sort of JavaScript is being deferred, there's not a huge benefit if your host is set up for what's called HTTP2, and I'm sorry, we're deep in the nerddom, but Probably not. You probably won't need a lot of caching plugins depending on your host, and that's sort of something that we're hoping to identify during our beta period is, what other recommendations we might make to further enhance your speed.
While we're here, is the beta period going on now, Jordan?
We've started internal beta, which means it's being tested in production sites. I actually submitted a PR last night that sort of is one of the last major hurdles to making it easier for us to go a little wider, which essentially was the PR that made it so that you can have custom site logos in the top, the top of the page. That was one of the last sort of major hurdles we had remaining, and I submitted a PR for that last night. After that, we're actually started on building some of our child theme designs out so that when people are beta testing, they'll have a few more options than I don't want 1,000 people running exactly the same site, and I don't think they do either. No. So we want to make sure that we can provide some variety through child themes for those users.
Do we have any kind of timeline for that?
November 32nd. No, I'm just kidding. August 32nd? No, the timeline is soon-ish. We're going to get through some internal testers. We have a large list. I think more than almost 200 folks have applied to be beta testers, and we'll be moving through that list as quickly as is reasonable based on availability of folks to help get folks online and make sure questions are answered. Because again, this is your site. It's very important. And it's, we want to make sure it's stable and ready before we're ready to start rolling it out widely. I am very confident that we have built an excellent product, but we want to make sure that we are fully confident before we go very, very wide.
If I wanted to join the beta test for Trellis, where could I add my name to that list?
I'm pretty sure it works. Mediavine.com/beta.
Can we post that up there, please, in the comments for my amazing...
I'm going to go double check that this URL actually works.
Okay, that's probably good. Maybe we should have done that before we did this. But
I tested it the other day, but I never trust myself. Yes, Mediavine.com/beta will direct you to the Mediavine Trellis beta interest form.
All right, let's post that. Let us go ahead and go on with the questions. Okay, so Marcus Mueller wants to know, as a recipe site, what if you want to use a recipe plugin other than Create? Can you use WPRM seamlessly? You kind of already answered this, but let's just make it very explicit for Marcus.
You absolutely can use whatever plugins you want, but I'm not going to be able to provide you the same page speed advantages. One of the big problems for most plugins in the market, in the repo and online, is that they all require a library called jQuery in order for their JavaScript to work. Trellis does not require that library, so we get a significant bump in our page speed by not requiring what is a relatively large JavaScript library. Create also uses a very small subset of CSS, yes, you absolutely can. You are not going to see the same speed numbers that you're going to see if you're running Create. And that might change. I don't know. That's up to the plugin developers to make changes to the way that the choices that they make.
Create is also really awesome, so you should probably use it anyway. Just my humble opinion. All right. Speaking of Create, which we are going to be doing next week, I've got a can of worms, Jordan. Are you ready for me to open it? Here we go. Don't sound so excited. You're supposed to at least fake excitement.
I'm mostly nervous when you say can of worms, that's not normally like a thing I want to open.
It's a can of worms.
I don't like fishing.
I don't either. Okay, speaking of Create, I wish you would add a jump to recipe button. Then I will switch to it.
I was talking we're not going to add a jump to recipe button to Create. And the reason we're not going to add a jump to recipe button is that we don't have any empirical evidence to support the idea that it has value, but we're not going to stop you from creating a jump to recipe button yourself. It's actually relatively easy to do. We create IDs. We have unique IDs on all of our Create cards.
Oh no, Jordan went away. Hold on, I'm going to bring him back. What the heck happened?
Now my audio's gone again.
You can't hear me? We can hear Jordan, but he can't hear us. That's no bueno. He went away again. That was like he was out like a shot of lightning. That was crazy. The other reason beyond ad revenue, the reason we're not super big fans, he did fall in the can of worms, Caron. That's true. And it was I'm gonna see if I can pull him out. We're gonna cross our fingers here. Here he comes. Jordan, can you hear me now?
Can I hear you now?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Can you hear me?
I can hear you. Can you hear me?
I can't hear you. Can I hear you now?
Can you hear me now?
No, I can't hear you now.
Go away. Go away. And come back. I'm sorry, everyone. Jordan's face. Hold on.
This is exciting.
We have an odyssey. I'm telling him to go away and then come back. We know now we can see Jordan and we can hear him, but he can't hear me, which makes it a little difficult to do this and have a conversation. I'm trying to tell him to go away and then come back. Hold on. Messaging him now. Give me a second, you guys. We love technology. It's so much fun. It is so darn much fun. The other thing about the jump to recipe button beyond sacrificing ad revenue is that you're working really hard on that content. Like Jordan said, if you are just wanting people to look at that recipe, then just put the recipe at the top if you want to see how that works. You guys create this amazing content and your people aren't seeing it if they're jumping straight to the recipe. I'm putting in Jordan again.
No, don't do it.
Nope. Did it work? This is a blast and fun. Jordan's just like a shot in the night. He comes in for a second and then he goes away. While I don't have Jordan, I don't love technology either, Julia. Especially today, it's being super awesome. And I just want to say that I'm really glad that this is happening right now. Okay, so for our next live, since we don't have Jordan and I'm by myself right now, is next Thursday. We're going to be trying to get back to our regular day of Thursday like we did last summer. And next Thursday, all these questions about Create are going to be super relevant because we are going to be talking exclusively about Create next Thursday. We're going to have our Mediavine VP of support, Nicole Johnson, and publisher Tara Jacobson from the site Marketing Artfully. And we're going to be sharing tips and tricks and practical uses of Create and unique ways that publishers are using it. So that's going to be what we're talking about next Thursday. It'll be 2 p.m. CST as we always are. And that is what's going on. And then in the future, let me look at what we've got coming up so we can talk a little bit about things that we've got upcoming for the Summer of Live. Let's see. So this first month, we've been focused on, especially on Mediavine. So for our first week, we had some of our original publishers on, which was really exciting to talk about. Now we had 4 years as a full service ad management company, and that happened this month. And we were pretty excited about that. And then the second week we had Amber and Eric on, and they talked about kind of Mediavine's beginnings and inception and the way that we kind of came to be and came to become a full service ad management company. We also talked about potty training. Not sure how that happened, but that did happen. And I'm glad I wasn't here because I would have had nothing to offer. I don't remember my own potty training. Yes, 2 p.m. CST, Caron, that is absolutely accurate. But this first month, and then so this week we're doing Trellis, which is very exciting. And then next week we're doing Create. And that's kind of our month focusing. They told you 3 p.m. CST, Tara. Tara, we'll talk. We'll talk. It is. It's so 2 p.m. CST is 3 EST. So that's absolutely right, Tara. And we are looking forward to having you here. And then so the second month of the Summer of Live is focused on beyond blogging. And what we mean by that is all the different things that aren't directly related to just the business of blogging. So we're talking about things like our first week, we're really excited. We're talking about giving back and turning your passion into compassion, which is a way of using these unique skills and talents that you have as a blogger and a publisher and a content creator and using it to give back. And we have 2 amazing guests that have really, really know how to do that. And those would be Betsy Eves of Java Cupcake and Julie Diley of The Little Kitchen. And they are both incredible, and they are both doing amazing work for multiple charities. And we'll be talking about that and talking about ways that Jordan's face appeared for like a splash, like a little second. Oh, maybe he's back again. Gonna play that by ear. So then the week after that, we're going to be talking about book publishing, and we'll be talking about both digital and actual book publishing. And we've got a couple of Mediavine publishers who are very expert in that. I'm bringing Jordan in again. Let's keep our fingers crossed. Let's see if we can keep talking about Trellis. Jordan, can you hear me?
I can hear you.
I can. Yes.
All right. I'm never trying to do this on a laptop ever again. I'm just always going to use my iPad. I'm sorry. Never trust the internet to do its job.
You know, we've just been chatting. We've just been chatting and shooting the breeze. Okay, I'll talk more, guys, about what we're going to do. We'll talk more about the Summer of Live in a little bit, but let's get back to Trellis. I know that we have lots of questions here, and we're going to come back. Let me scroll back up to where my questions are. We were talking about the jump to recipe button, and Jordan, you were saying that having create does not mean you can't have a jump to recipe button. Is that accurate?
Yes, we're not planning to build that feature into create because again, we don't have empirical evidence that supports, and we also know that if we do that, you're going to lose a lot of revenue. However, I mean, essentially the issue becomes if you're going to use a jump to recipe button, you could save the user a lot of time and just put your recipe card at the top of the page. And that's essentially what you're doing when you're using a jump to recipe button. And so you're taking away and so you're not going to scroll the page. And that you would, I mean, so if that's what you want to try, we encourage you to try it any way you want. But we also know that it's pretty easy. We've made it easy to create that jump to recipe button and give it a try. But our general experience is we're not seeing a lot of change in people's metrics because they don't have a jump to recipe button, but we are going to see them drop their revenue because all of those in-content ads, their sidebar PTF, all of those ad slots are just not going to get rendered and therefore potentially not going to create value for our publishers.
Their sidebar what, Jordan?
I'm sorry, sidebar BTF. It's a sticky sidebar ad.
The one and what does BTF stand for?
I don't know. I don't know what BTF stands for. I know it's called sidebar BTF because it's the class.
Below the fold, Jordan.
Oh, below the fold? Is that what it stands for? And that's why it's ATF. Nobody ever told me what it stood for, and I had no reason to ask questions. I knew where it was.
That's really all that matters. That's you. I mean, you and Phil, you're starting to get on my my poop list for the acronyms and then you don't know what they mean. And then Phil at least knows what they mean when he comes on the show.
Phil was hired for his ad tech experience. I was hired for, I had none. I knew nothing about ads when I got here. It's not when I was hired. So I'm catching up as quickly as I can.
Just so you don't know, just so you do know, Eric Hochberger is lingering in here, and he's
I'm certain that
filling
he will give
in the blanks of your acronym,
acronym
lack of knowledge. So he's here he's got your back, so don't worry. Or do worry because it's Eric and you didn't know what BTF meant. But that's cool. All right, here we go. We're moving forward. Okay. There was something that is definitely NSFW, not suitable for work, that someone posted in these comments, and I'm not going to share because we will derail completely. We've talked about the jump to recipe button. Veronica Behrman wants to know, will this be compatible with Elementor? Which sounds like
I'm going to say no, but that's because nothing is compatible with Elementor because Elementor is destroying your page speed. I know from experience that if you take Elementor on your site, you can probably count on a 10-point bump on your page speed insights. So yes, honestly, yes, you can install Elementor and it's going to render to the page and it'll technically work, but you're not going to see any of the value really that we created in Trellis for you when it comes to the page speed advantages. You'll still have the progressive web app built in. That's a plus, but you're not going to get really any of the massive improvements that we've built in for page speed if you're running Elementor.
So Elementor is, in fact, much like Skeletor from He-Man, which is what I've been thinking since I heard of Elementor. So those should be synonymous in your mind.
Because it's a bad thing?
Because it's Do you know who Skeletor is? Did you watch He-Man?
I never watched He-Man. I know what pictures are from internet memes, but I've never actually watched He-Man.
Jordan.
I wasn't allowed to watch Saturday morning cartoons really as a child, so I had to watch PBS only. I think that might be the only channel we had, to be honest with you.
Doesn't know what BTF is. Doesn't know who Skeletor is. Yeah. Winning everywhere today, Jordan. Okay. Ma Anna Stevenson wants to know, with more functionality built into the theme instead of using plugins, will the theme need to update often, and will those updates knock out the design choices that we've made?
No, that's part of the reason we're talking about. That's what child themes are for, right? The theme, like a lot of this core functionality is in the parent theme, which is Trellis. The child themes are built so that you can update the core of Trellis without impacting any of what is the presentation to your users. So yes and no. It's really also going to depend on how you make those changes, either through a custom child, which a developer might build for you. But if you're making changes via custom CSS or some other service, that information will not be lost on an update.
That's excellent. Can you guys hear me? Because Karen Provost just said she couldn't. Can you hear me, Jordan?
I can hear you, which is a miracle because I've had that problem all day.
We've had all sorts of problems with that. I'm glad you can hear me. Just a couple of updates. Rose Siders, one of our publisher support specialists, said that she used to confuse ATF and BTF and kept thinking it was before the fold and after the fold. Phil Bone, our VP of Sales and Revenue, said acronyms equals intelligence. Hashtag fact. Phil is hashtagging with us right now. Okay, back to more questions. Let's see what we got here. I need to go up a little bit because we had a couple of freakouts happening for people saying that we couldn't hear Jordan. Diane Williams, will you help us optimize our blogs if we use your purchase theme with Trellis? Talking about initial setup mostly, maybe tech support if you are that unique. Other techs may not know how.
If you are paying for Trellis through our marketplace and Pro, which I hope that we actually announced, but now I guess it's out the bag now if Eric didn't announce it fully. Pretty sure he did. Yeah, the Pro thing was announced at the conference.
You've already said it in this.
Okay, that's fine. Look, I got confused. There was a whole thing with technical difficulties. There will be, you'll have access to our support team like you do now. We are not ready to sort of identify all of our plans and all of the encompassing things that may or may not be included because those decisions haven't all been made. And that's sort of part of what we're exploring during our beta period is to be able to make those decisions with all of the information at hand. Part of having this beta period is also about us learning the best way to provide support and resources to make it viable for you to run this on your sites.
Fantastic. Okay. Alrighty. Next question. Also, I do want to call attention to the fact that custom child is a really, really strange phrase that you used. And it sounds like genetically engineered children. And it's strange. Okay. So we now know that, let's talk about this. Let's talk about the migration process just in general and why it might be different with Trellis. If you're changing frameworks for your site, what is involved and who do you need to get involved and how can you get help?
So if you're just changing from Genesis and some Genesis child theme to Trellis and a child theme, it should be relatively seamless. You might find that you can turn off some plugins or that you don't need them anymore. A lot of the Genesis plugins that people need for things, those aren't going to work, so there's no reason to leave them on. But if you're just, that would be most of the process. The migration is actually relatively straightforward from turning a theme off and turning a theme on. But you'll find that if you have a lot of custom settings and adjustments in your Genesis themes, those aren't going to work both ways. So if depending on sort of what you've done with your Genesis site, there might be a slightly larger number of adjustments you might have to make. But when it comes to if you've ever turned off a theme and then turned on a new one, it can go really, really well or really poorly, or it might not actually go poorly. It just might not be something you expect. I know that when I turn themes on and off, I know what to expect because it's been my job for a long time. So it's hard for me to answer that question because I don't have the context of what experience you might have had in the past or what you might be running on your site that would be impacted. It's one of the reasons we're, again, doing this sort of beta period is to sort of identify where those hurdles are happening.
Yeah, it's good to know that you know what to expect when turning off and on frameworks. Like I thought I knew what to expect when I was speaking with you and assumed that you would know what BTF was or that you would know what He-Man was.
And I assumed that Be Live would work instead of Be Dead.
It is really unfortunate. All right. We will share those. Those are for another day, those thoughts on Be Live. Noreen Welburn Rogers, are there outside companies in the process of creating additional themes for Trellis?
Not yet, but again, that's part of what we'll be doing during the beta period is identifying partners who are interested. We have had at least a couple of partners express interest in working with Trellis, some of which you will have heard of before. However, we will be not making any official announcements until announcements are official. And so as we go through the beta period, that will be relationships will be explored.
Relationships will be explored, like the dating game. So Ben Heath said, you mentioned not needing Yoast going forward. Will Trellis import the titles and meta titles from Yoast?
I'm sorry. I did not say you do not need Yoast. I would not encourage you to. Yoast does some things that we are not doing yet in Trellis. And so I would encourage you to continue using Yoast. We're not going to be importing Yoast settings. What I'm saying, if you were to start a new site, you might be able to find that you didn't need to turn on Yoast, but we do not have there's a ton of settings in Yoast that we do not have support for. Like custom titles on a per page basis is not something that we built in at this point. The goal for Trellis is to always have sensible defaults. And so even if you didn't have Yoast, you wouldn't find that you needed it immediately, like massively, but you also wouldn't have the same depth of options that you're going to have if you are running Yoast. The goal with Yoast for us is that we want to get out of Yoast's way if you're using Yoast so that you don't end up with schema conflicts or other data conflicts. However, if you don't have Yoast installed, it's going to generate some default open graph tags, some default title tags, etc. So that, if something happens and Yoast deactivates itself, or perhaps maybe Yoast has a bug of some kind, you wouldn't immediately lose all of that schema, because if it deactivates itself, you could go and figure out what's happening and not lose absolutely everything as a result.
That's helpful.
Generally speaking, I would say that with Trellis, we have our goal is always sensible defaults. And so making sure that if something happens and you're down to just your theme, you're not going to, lose the entire farm.
Sensible defaults. That is my band name. Okay, Megan Leal wants to know, related/unrelated question. I'm working on getting all my recipes over to Create and was wondering if there's a metric conversion option or one in the works. Megan, we're talking about Create next week, but I'll allow it because of all the technical difficulties we've had. Jordan, you can answer that.
It is on our roadmap. We have a plan for how we're going to implement it, but we have not begun our implementation development yet.
So yes is the answer, but we don't.
It will happen.
Okay.
But I would prefer, honestly, it would have saved me huge amounts of effort if the United States had just gone metric a long time ago. So really, I blame the government for this.
And that has very little to do with Trellis/Create and more to do personal life things that have happened for Jordan. So we're just throwing that out there. Okay. Jordan, should we show him anything on my screen? Do you want to pull anything up? Do you want to look? Trellis?
So I'd love to show just a real quick, if you would show the sort of the box score, the numbers, the Lighthouse numbers real quick, just sort of give a rundown of this is a site that's in production that's running essentially Trellis, Create, Yoast, a handful of other plugins, but still scoring and running ads and still scoring very well. So this is a set of scores that you'll get when it shares.
I'm doing it. One moment.
I mean, odds are my audio won't crash, but who knows?
One never knows. We don't want to. Okay. So can you see my screen now? Everyone should be able to see it. Okay. I am.
Should I see your screen?
Or? You should not. I don't want
It's not totally clear to me.
No. Why would it be? Okay,
so
we've got
you're showing right now.
Up now.
Okay. Well, this is very hard for me to present on since I don't know exactly what's showing.
I'm on the slide where it's got all of the total scores for performance, accessibility, best practice, and SEO.
So those are, like we mentioned, we built this with Lighthouse in mind. we're still, hitting 100 is a lot harder than I would like to admit, and we'll be looking for additional ways. Like I said, I came up with another way to speed up Create recently, and so we're always looking for ways to improve these numbers. After hours and hours of work, we're very happy with these scores. Hey, I can see it now.
Oh my God.
So we have a 96 for performance. That is influenced not only by Trellis, and that's also influenced by other plugins. So there are a couple of other plugins that do count for a couple of points. One of the fun things during this build is that we learned that Google Fonts as well as Google Analytics will impact your performance scores, but those are also things that you can't get away with. So we had to find ways to try and help those scores along. So we're very happy with these scores. And we think that you will be too. And the way these sites feel is incredible. One of the great things about these scores is that this is your first page scores. It's the first time a person uses their site ever. Because we use a progressive web app and what's called a service worker, which we're deep in the weeds on that. But because of that progressive web app experience, all of these scores on a second page load are going to hit 100s across the board. So the site actually gets faster on the second page load rather than having the same experience. The next thing I would mention is if you want to take to the slides that include just a sort of a couple of the child themes.
Yep, I can do that. Do you want any of the other Lighthouse slides before we move forward, or you just want to do the child themes?
No, the child themes is good. We're not going to talk about Lighthouse. I'm sure that at some point in the future I will get on here and we'll just talk about page speed. But today it's about Trellis, so let's show off a couple of Trellis styles. We have a couple of child themes that have been designed and sort of will begin production on. You might notice as you go through that our themes have a very common pattern of being named after some kind of plant. And so this is Wisteria, and then the next one is there's one below that called Marigold. These are designed with our in-house UX designer, Kat. But we are also going to be working, like we mentioned, with some third-party designers as well as third-party developers to increase the family of available child themes.
Those are really pretty. I love those. Can we go ahead and, all right, we're going to stop sharing. And here we are. We're back. Hello. Welcome. Sorry, everyone, for the massive amount of technical difficulties we've been having. All right. Let us talk a little bit about, can we talk about the logo? The Trellis logo, and can we show that?
You can absolutely show the Trellis logo.
I think it's really pretty.
I'm a big fan of the Trellis logo. I got the Trellis buttons at the conference. I was very excited.
Yeah. I miss seeing you guys at the conference. Let's post the Trellis logo, and then in the meantime, let's go ahead and ask the question that everyone wants to know. Like you said, that the beta is happening. We did post the link to go to the beta to sign up for the beta, but do we have any sort of estimate or guesstimate on when we might actually be releasing Trellis?
So I aspirationally hope to have some non-Mediavine employee beta testers rolling out sometime in July. It'll be a limited release as we sort of roll out and build out some child themes. So again, that not everybody's running the one core. But I know I have a couple of volunteers who said, I don't care what it looks like, I want to try it. And so I anticipate that you'll start seeing just keep an eye out on your fellow Mediaviner sites. You might see it pop up in unexpected places, but I hope that we'll be able to roll it out to some publishers in the beta as sometime in July. Okay, am I the only person who can't hear Jenny now, or is it?
Now I'm talking. I muted myself. You go. I muted myself. If you can't tell, I'm sweating because this has been a really smooth Facebook Live that I'm being welcomed back on.
Your sweater's on brand.
Thank you. Thank you, Jordan, for always being so positive. I am going to. We cannot share pictures in the comments of Facebook. So we're going to go ahead and I'm going to show my screen, and I'm going to quickly go to, I'm looking for the Trellis logo in your presentation so we can show that. Maybe I was told that it's.
I don't think I have a Trellis logo in that presentation.
I was told that you do. I was told that you do. You don't? That was a lie. So we're not going to do that. We're not going to do that.
I've got this. Hold on.
You got it? Okay.
I've got this. Here we go.
What do you got? Let's see.
There we go.
Oh, there it is. So you see, as you can see, the lower button shows the Create logo, and then the upper button shows the Trellis logo. And that is what we have. Thank you, Jordan. Thank you for doing that. So who designed that logo?
Kat, and I believe Susanna might have been involved. Susanna designed the Create logo. I think Kat did the Trellis logo. And what you might have heard is that we are starting work on a new plugin called Grow. And Kat and Susanna are working on that logo, I believe, potentially starting today.
Yes, that is accurate.
Inside baseball.
They are starting today. You got insider knowledge right now on this live. Yes, Eric, it wasn't yours. It wasn't yours. Thank you, Eric. The Trellis logo was in Eric's presentation, Jordan, just so you know that. That was helpful to us. Really helpful to us right now. Yes, Megan Leo was really excited about your buttons. They're really awesome. If you didn't get a chance to get one of those awesome buttons in Chicago, you can get an awesome button in Austin that's happening in November. So you still have chances for buttons. So if there aren't any other last minute questions for Jordan, we've answered a lot of questions and a lot of exciting stuff about Trellis. We did get him to state a date of July, which is next month, he is aspirationally wishing for next month.
Optimistically, we're not going to promise anything. There were no promises made. No promises. But
we're hopeful. We're very, very hopeful. Okay.
And I will also try to answer questions in Facebook as I can over the next couple of days. So
Jordan is going to try, if you've got more questions,
I'll try to follow up.
If people have specific questions about Trellis, is there a place they can email?
Publishers@mediavine.com.
Great. Love that. Love that. So go ahead and email into if you have specific questions about Trellis, and we will make sure that
they are going to love that.
Yeah. Well, we'll make sure that it gets to the right people. How about that? If you send it to publishers, we'll funnel it to the right people who have the answers for you. Karen Provost has one more question for Jordan. She says, I'm building my site now and would like to wait to use Trellis, but when would regular folk like me? Well, Karen, we're hoping for July. That is what Jordan has said.
That would be early beta, though. If you're building a site now, unfortunately, it's not going to be available for that for a little while. One of the things we're hoping and we're evaluating is hopefully it won't be too difficult to convert other custom themes into Trellis supported themes. But because we are aware of that desire, but we're not ready to sort of hand it out for custom development because we want to make sure that everything is sort of tested out and planned so that we're not making what are called in our world breaking changes.
And we appreciate that. And we appreciate you looking out for the livelihood and the integrity of our sites. That's very important. Okay. Karen Gibson said she thinks she peed herself a little, which we appreciate your honesty and your excitement for our product. Noreen Welberg Rogers is saying before fourth quarter. Is that possible?
As always, at Mediavine, we hope to make that things will be done before you hit fourth quarter because we know the importance of the fourth quarter. If you are not on the beta list, you should get on the beta list if you want access earlier because we will probably onboard everyone on the beta list. Probably, I'm not promising that, but our goal is to get through the beta list first. So if you're on the beta list, you have a better chance of getting it sooner because we are going to be the beta list is not going to go in chronological order. We're going to be as we ramp through, we're going to be picking and choosing based on compatibility and our ability to support the site. And we're going to be taking other metrics in mind to try and ramp into folks. But our goal is to try and get through all of our beta testers as quickly as is reasonable.
You're kind of turning into Eric Hochberger in the promising things that your team is probably watching and cursing you on.
More than likely, my team's not watching because they never do. So I have that going for me.
That's hurtful, Jordan, and you just admitted that to me. So
they don't watch me. They don't want to see me. They're tired of my face most of the time as it is.
Okay.
To be fair, though, I'm also putting this on myself because I am still a contributing engineer on the Trellis project substantially, and will have personally worked to onboard folks, and will probably also personally help onboard other folks. So it's not just them that has roped themselves into pain and agony.
Yeah.
I've done it to myself as well.
Absolutely. Well, Jordan, I always like your face, and I always enjoy having it on either the Summer of Live or Teal Talk. So it is very fun to have you, even on a live that is riddled with technical difficulties as this one has been.
I promise to never try and use a laptop for this ever again.
Okay, that I will hold you on that. Okay, someone is having difficulties with the link to the beta, because why not? Why wouldn't they? So Susanna is giving them some advice. Guys, we are out of time today. I'm so happy to have had Jordan here, and we're very excited about Trellis. It's so convenient that you had your buttons in the background ready to go.
I have all of my badges as well as my Mediavine medal.
And your guitar. So
my guitar, yeah.
Do you? Last question from me. Do you want to serenade us before we sign off?
I do not.
You don't? All right.
No.
I wanted to make sure that.
Plus, I know that the audio quality might be questionable, or it might just drop out at any moment. So.
Okay, well, I was willing to chance it just to hear your singing voice, but if you're not willing to do it, I understand.
I'm not prepared for that today.
I get it.
Also, I'm holding the iPad in my left hand, so that also complicates the ability to play guitar.
Okay, rain check. We'll look at that again in the future. All right, everyone. It has been an amazing Wednesday. Next Thursday, I have Nicole Johnson, our VP of Publisher Support, and I have Tara Jacobson of the blog Marketing Artfully. We're going to talk all things Create. We're going to talk unique ways to use it, great features, things that are on the horizon. Nicole is an expert. Tara is rapidly becoming an expert with her usage of it, and we are so thrilled to close out our month of Mediavine with that. And don't worry, the Summer of Live is just going to keep rolling. We've got a live a week all the way to Labor Day. So do not sweat. We will be here with hopefully less difficulties. I just froze again. Let's go away before something blows up. Okay, thanks everybody. Have an amazing week, and we'll see you next Thursday for our Create. Thank you again to our Publisher Engineering Manager, Jordan. And have a great day, everybody. Bye.